So good evening, everyone. This is Ubuntu channel, and we are live again. Always on Monday, we come to you to bring the health zone. If you are joining us wherever you are, we're saying good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are watching Ubuntu from. Remember, us we are live on Facebook. We're also live on Twitter, and we are live on YouTube. Don't forget to like the page for Ubuntu on Facebook. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel on YouTube and to follow us on Twitter. Now, today on Health Zone, we are discussing something that is important to you and to me, and that is mental health. And to help us in this discussion, I am joined by Emmanuel Chabamba. This is a
Yes.
topic that is of importance. Good evening, Mr. Emmanuel, and welcome to
Good
Ubuntu.
evening, Mr. Good evening, Mr. Reuben, and thank you so much. Thank you.
Lovely. It's your first time coming to Ubuntu, so tell us, share with us who is Mr. Emmanuel Chabamba.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm a youth activist, and I'm a student, certain university within Lusaka, and I'm pursuing my bachelor's in biomedical sciences. But the passion for mental health brought in the aspect of activism, and where my activism as of lately is based on mental health. And it was I had to incorporate it with suicide too, and looking at the rate at which at that point the suicide cases were abruptly, and which mental health was quite concerned and quite connected to it. And that's where my activism became so much based on it. I've spent much of my time having more research, reaching out to people who have mental health problems, and in general, yeah, reached out to some facilities and seeing how these people are kept and how they are relating. And it's where the great passion for mental health has arose. And as a youth activist trying to impact change in our society, it's my duty to live and give the knowledge that I have on mental health to the people it needs to be disseminated to, which is a community. That's basically more what I could say about myself.
All right, thanks. So, when did you start being a mental health activist?
Okay. This began, I can say, approximately more than a year ago, when the rates of when I saw the need to create the change, and when I saw the need to create the awareness to society and the community at large. I've been this for now over a year now.
All right, great. Let's dive into the topic tonight. So,
Yes, Mr.
I want to understand. Help us understand what is mental health.
Okay. Mental health is simply the state of an. I would really love to put it as simple as it could be for in a layman's language. I would say mental health is simply the general state of an individual, which encompasses the emotional, psychological, and social well-being. What I mean by psychological well-being of an individual, the ability of a person to perceive certain situations. So, for example, how a person sorts out a problem, how you handle your problems. How do you think it's more incorporated with how a person thinks? When I talk about emotional well-being, I'm talking about mental health encompasses that aspect of knowing how are you feeling at a particular time. So right now I can say I'm feeling excited, I can say I'm feeling happy, I can say I'm feeling very low, I can say I'm sad. So in that context, I'm able to know how I'm feeling. So that's the aspect of where feeling comes in as an which is encompassed in mental health. Then when we say it encompasses the social well-being, this is simply how a person relates with the environment. So when we talk about the environment, there is a lot we find in the environment. So we find the how a person relates with basically nature. How nature is part of our environment, and most importantly, how a person relates with human. That's human to human interaction. How a person interacts with fellow humans who are close to the person. How do you relate? So basically, mental health it's it affects the general well-being of the human being, starting from behavior up to how we think and we relate with others.
All right. So, how can we how can you differentiate mental health from mental illness?
Mental. Okay. Thank you for that question, Mr. Reuben. Well, actually, mental health has been of many times misquoted with mental illness. So when I say immediately I talk about, I say mental health, somebody thinks about somebody who is mentally ill. Okay. So the main difference that we find between mental health and mental illness is mental illness is a disorder. Okay, so it's like a disease in this context. So mental health is a general state of a normal person, your general state of being. It's like mental health, everybody has that health. Okay, so it's that point where when a disease or an illness comes in, or let me not use the illness because we're defining the mental illness, but let me say a disease or that disorder comes in as a result of failure to taking care of our mental health. So that's the main distinction. Mental illness is a disorder, okay? It's a disease, I can say in that context. So when you say a person is mentally ill, a person has a disease.
Hi, Mr. Emmanuel, can you get me? Sorry, unfortunately, I can't get Mr. Emmanuel. All right, so this is Health Zone on Ubuntu channel. We come every day on Monday at 20 hours, and we discuss nothing but your healthy, my healthy, and our family's healthy. And tonight on Health Zone, we are discussing mental healthy. And from Emmanuel's uh, explanation, he says mental healthy is the state of your social, emotional well-being. And unfortunately, we just lost him, and I'm sure he's going to come back so that you can dive in and differentiate what's the difference between mental healthy and mental illness. For now, we'll go on a short commercial break, and then when we come back, we'll continue with Mr. Emmanuel discussing what is mental healthy. See you on other.
Ubuntu ninshila iyo abantu basenderamu ifyo umuntu afiire okuba n'efyo afiire okukita n'efyo afiire okwikaliramu ubuntu.
Ubuntu means humbleness. Ubuntu means humility. Ubuntu means love.
All right, we're back again. Hi, Mr. Emmanuel. Can you get me now?
Hello. Yes, Mr. Reuben, I can get you. Hope you're getting me now.
Yes, it sounds better now. Mr. Emmanuel, before you left, I'd asked you a question.
Yes.
How can someone, what's the difference between mental healthy and mental illness? Because
illness.
these two still seems as if they're being used by
They are being
people
used
like
interchangeably, which is not
Yes.
okay. Okay.
Exactly.
Thank
So
you for that,
if,
Mr. Reuben.
if people say I don't if someone just names mental healthy, they think automatically that this person has got maybe an illness, a mental illness. So help us understand what the difference between the mental health and mental illness.
Okay, so basically the main difference between mental health and mental illness is mental health is a normal state of an individual. Okay, the mental illness is a disease. When a person has a disorder, we can call it a mental disorder. In that context, that's when we can refer to the person as being mentally ill. So mental illness is a disease or it's a disorder, while mental health is a general state of an individual. It's a normal state of an individual, of which you and I, we expect ourselves to be. We have to expect ourselves to be in a normal state. The moment we begin to show those signs, that's now where mental illness comes in as now a challenge. So that manifests by in the general behavior of an individual. Okay, so that's the simplest. That's like the main difference we find between the mental illness and mental health.
All right. So, Mr. Emmanuel, let's dive in on mental illness then. What are
Mhm.
the common forms of mental illness?
Okay, so when we talk about mental illness, there are many forms. Mental illness can manifest in many different ways. So, like one of the ways in which it manifests, because it's a mental illness. Those are mental disorders. You cannot be able to see them in the like you cannot see the brain of a person, of course. So most of these, they manifest through the actions of an individual, and these actions are the ones which will be able to tell us that this person has a mental disorder. So now some of these actions we will be able to see by it's from the actions that we are able now to say this mental disorder is this and this mental disorder is this. So the forms of manifestation of mental illnesses include I'll start with bipolar. So bipolar, it's a very serious mental disorder, of which even currently, it's currently one of the highest mental disorders we are seeing. I had an opportunity to visit the Chainama mental hospital, Chainama Hills Mental Hospital here in Lusaka. It should be last month, and I had to request, if possible, just to check out, and an interaction with a clinical medical care for psychiatry, and we had quite a good discussion. And one of the common causes we're finding there, the bipolar. These people come in, day out. They are always, almost on a daily basis. There are people who are being admitted because of bipolar. So bipolar is a kind of mental disorder which is associated with extreme mood swings. So there are mood swings. Mood swings are normal. It's like a normal thing. Change of mood, it's a normal thing of which you have to adapt. But extreme mood swings, those are what we can categorize as a mental disorder in form of bipolar. So one of the examples, somebody can ask out there and just say, how does mood swings affect, and how do you even describe uh, mood swings as a mental disorder? One thing I would tell you is, a person with bipolar, we can be having an interaction here one to one. Any slight thing that will not be in line will always have an abrupt reaction from that person, uncontrollably. So it's from that point that this person can even grab even a stone just to stone anything. So these are some of the side effects of having like this bipolar of it. Secondly,
Just
I will
just a,
talk
just a
about
bit, just a
okay.
bit, Mr. Emmanuel. So I want us to
Yes,
help
Mr. Reuben.
our viewers understand. So someone with
Hmm.
bipolar, they've got extreme moods. In short,
Yes.
are these people that we see that are violent?
Okay. Some of these, the direct answer I could say is a yes to that. These people become extremely violent because they are unable to mold their change of moods, and their change of the frustration in them. They are unable to control their feelings at that point. Okay, then it's from there that these people even become so violent to an extent where they can do anything.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Reuben.
All right. You can continue. The other forms of
Okay.
mental illness.
Okay. So the other forms of mental disorder, um we can talk about paranoia. Okay, I know some might not even understand what it is, but anyway, that's why we are here today, to give an explanation to this. So paranoia, most people with paranoia begin to see the people around them as enemies of some sort, who are always who are there to either laugh at them or bring their self-esteem down. So I'll give an example in this context. Mr. Ruben, you're walking in the road, okay? Then you find this gentleman, they are just telling a story. They just laugh. Your imaginations in your head would be like, these people are laughing at me. So you have illusions in your head which the people do not necessarily have about you. So this thing, one of the effects of this kind of mental disorder is that these people begin to lower their self-esteem, begin to come down. It gets down. The lower the self-esteem gets, this is where now we are finding the other forms of mental illness, which I'll talk about later, like depression. This is how depression mostly comes in and affect these people with paranoia. So the lower the self-esteem, it also creates that segregation from society, which again we'll talk about it on the symptoms of how you would know that someone is going through the verge of these mental disorders. So they begin creating all those barriers amongst themselves, and in the end they become those other forms I talked about, like depression comes in, and which now puts them in critical conditions where they're unable. The only thing that can help is the rehab or the hospitals. Then the other thing I would talk about, something like post-traumatic stress disorder. So the post-traumatic stress disorder, some people would be like, no, we are in Zambia. Is that even here? Yes, it's a common trait. There are those things where post-traumatic stress disorder. These are the kind of disorders where, okay, let me just define it maybe in a layman's language again. Post-traumatic stress disorder is like failure of an individual to recover from a previous traumatic experience. So there are situations where you will find yourself in a very sensitive situation. Okay, sometimes it's even from the things that a person watches, the kind of movies you watch, and you begin to you get so frightened to an extent that every time you try to lay in bed and sleep, you begin to see those images as if they are real, and you begin to imagine those things as if they are there. In the end, when they come, they'll be like, this person, when you tell a person and say, I'm seeing this, and everybody will be like, oh, we cannot, it's not true. And everybody will begin to say, this person is not okay. Let's take him, I think he's hallucinating or something. That's exactly what post-traumatic stress disorder is. So if you dig down, you dig deeper, you realize that there should have been maybe a certain situation this person found him or herself in, of which was so frightening, and he or she could not recover from that traumatic situation. And they began to see all those things every time they are alone or they're in a quiet place. This one is quite related with the one we can call schizophrenia or the schizophrenia, of which you see things which are not there. So in this context, it's not about you seeing the things that happened, that an incident which was so frightening you couldn't recover from. No, these people begin to imagine things which are not there. So I feel I strongly feel this was one kind of a disorder which I think some people even in the past used to face, to an extent where they say, I'm seeing ghosts. Okay, I'm seeing ghosts. No, this thing is chasing me. This is chasing me. What? Some of those, it's not that they are chasing them. Some of these are mental illnesses we're talking about. We can talk about schizophrenia, the same one here. So mainly the schizophrenia is usually, it's really connected with the use of some of the drugs like hallucinogens. There are many kind of or categories of drugs, but specifically the ones we can call hallucinogens. Okay, so most of those they affect how a human being or how our brain properly functions, to an extent where you now begin to see things which are not there. I'll give you an example. For example, when somebody is drunk, okay, what makes a person to move, not to move straight, it's like they are seeing bumps somewhere, It's something that is not there, and they are unable to. Yeah, that's the kind of approach I would give. So in the same use of drugs like hallucinogen have a great effect. So it's like in the same context where now this kind of this schizophrenia comes in, and the people begin to see those things which are not there, and they see a human being out there like a statue chasing them, of which is not true. So now most of some of these, okay, the other forms are very common. I'll give an example now. The next form of mental disorder I'll talk about is depression. Okay, so depression comes there's depression. You can put it in depression and stress because they are quite interlinked. So like, for example, stress, when we say stress, somebody would be like, what exactly are you talking about stress? So stress is simply the inability of a person to cope up with their mental pressure or emotional pressure. When you have some kind of emotional pressure of which you can't cope up with, okay, this is what we are calling as stress. So due to stress, stress can lead into depression. Okay, so as depression comes in, depression becomes a serious mental disorder, and this is one of the most seriously faced. We are facing current almost everywhere. Almost everywhere, depression is being faced, whether in churches, whether where depression is there, and um, the causes. Some of the causes. I don't know if we'll talk about the causes later, but anyways, yeah, the
Yeah,
causes are
we'll
due
talk
to
them about
many.
today.
Okay, we'll talk about them later. Yeah, but otherwise, we have depression on its own as a mental disorder. They are normal kind of. There's. I'll give an example. For example, you lose your loved one. Okay, there's that understood. There's that normal pressure somebody can have, but the prolonged. Quote me correctly. The prolonged depression is what we are calling as a mental disorder here. Yes, there are kind of there are situations.
Right. Our viewers seem to have a bit of a challenge there with Mr. Emmanuel, but immediately he's back. We'll continue with our discussion. We're talking about mental health. So at some point, viewers will allow you to come in the studio to ask also your questions. You can also type your questions in the comment box, and we'll be able to see them and respond to your questions. Mr. Emmanuel, we were talking about the depression.
Yes.
Yeah, so you said
Yes. So
when you observe that you have got a prolonged depression,
yes,
it becomes now a mental illness.
it
Am I right?
becomes now a mental disorder. Yes. So most of these, it's as a result of what we are facing, of which I know we'll talk about them later. Then the other forms of mental disorders, we have anxiety. Also, anxiety comes in as a mental disorder. Of course, it's also I would also link it a little with depression, but anxiety, it's also the prolonged of it. I'll give also a scenario where you can differentiate between the normal anxiety and where anxiety becomes a mental disorder. So there's this anxiousness we feel. For example, when you're the time you're having your first interview, and obviously on online, you didn't know what you're exactly. It was like your first experience. You get that a little nervous kind of a thing. For example, you're going to write your exams. There's just that normal kind of thing that you feel as a little anxious, nervous, a little. That's expected to situations. If you have never had an encounter with with an experience, that's expected. But the prolonged of anxiety becomes a mental disorder. I have had an opportunity to have a colleague who happens to have been suffering from anxiety and anxiety issues. Trust me, by then it was very hard for this colleague to even attend lessons. Nobody could understand, because when you just say, I have anxiety, I have anxiety issues, I have an anxiety problem, nobody would understand, because they don't know how strong and what impact that can cause to a human being. I'm telling you, anxiety is something that is real. I was also privileged to have another colleague who was so open about it. And I remember once in a while we were together at some radio station, and we talked about anxiety and also depression. Trust me, let me maybe just highlight a situation. It was like there was a time when it's like people you because people do not understand in society what anxiety really, how what the impact of anxiety can be. They, at some point, it was thought to be something spiritual. Okay, because the situation she used to find herself in, she would be okay, the following day she would not be fine. So they begin to feel it's a spiritual problem. They went to the pastor one time. After they prayed, she felt as if she was okay. From there, went back home, stayed for a little, and it was now a serious case. It continued again. They returned to some for more prayers, and the time they came back, she was fine after being prayed for. Went back home, it was a different case. So this, until there was an advice, had to reach the hospital, and she was found to have anxiety, and she was given some antidepressants, of course, the drugs at the hospital, and she was she had a normal life. The normal life continued. So there are some of these which are happening even out there, which many people are misconcepting. Like they have the misconception of the general, like of it all. They feel it's something else, and yet it's just something that needs to be attended to at a health facility. Then we also have eating disorders. Eating disorders. So mainly with eating
So,
disorders.
sounds funny.
I know, it
Yes.
sounds funny. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So mainly eating disorders, this is usually it can come in as a result of depression in most cases. It could be quite interlinked with depression. Most people find it hard even just to eat. Some of those it becomes a disorder with a continuous, but mainly as an eating disorder, there should be an underlying situation which is inducing to that, or which is leading to the eating disorders mainly on its own. That's what I could talk about the eating
The
disorders.
forms.
Then I think we have eluded some anyway, just to name maybe the obsessive compulsive disorder, which is not something that is so common, but otherwise most of these what you have talked about are most of the common forms of mental disorders. Of course there might be others, but these are the most common mental disorders that we are facing even at the moment.
All right. Thank you very much. So, our viewers, you're watching Health Zone on Ubuntu channel. We come every Monday, and we discuss nothing but about your healthy and my healthy and our family's healthy. Now, Mr. Emmanuel, back to you.
Yes,
You've talked about all these forms of mental disorders or illnesses. I wanted to find out from you how, if I have one of the disorders, how can I know that
yes,
now uh,
yes.
I'm suffering from a mental disorder? What are some of the symptoms that I should know? Or maybe my
Look out
relative has
for.
got a mental disorder. What can I? What are some of the symptoms for mental illness?
Okay, thank you so much. To start with, as I tackle that, in my preamble, I alluded in my definition for mental health. I had to allude what mental health encompasses. It encompasses the general behavior. It encompasses the relationship of an individual with the environment, including the person, the people around, and the nature at large. I talked about the psychological effects of mental health. That's how a person perceives problems and how they tend to reason at that point. I also talked about the emotional well-being, how a person relates. I mean, is a person able to tell how they are feeling at that particular time. So now this is even the approach which could really help us to understand what a person is really going through, or if this person is going through these mental illnesses. It starts from the general behavior. Of course, we can't see the brain and understand and know there's a disorder in the brain without seeing of course, the traits. So it starts from the traits. There are certain these mostly how there's a shift in how a person approaches their problems in most cases. So I'll give an example. Okay, before I give examples, it's depending on the type of disorder, it has its own traits. So I'll give an example with, if a person is I'll give like bipolar in this case, bipolar itself. So bipolar tackles mostly on the social part, and on the little bit of the social part, and more on the emotional part. So it's how a person is able, is this person, a person with bipolar is unable to control his or her emotions at a particular time. So that's a symptom on its own that this person is having a challenge, or what, with mental health challenge. Okay, these are mostly you find these sometimes we regard it, even in homes we say no, it's a normal thing. It's a baba. That's how they are. Sorry to use vernacular. Yeah, that's
No, we
so
allow
if
we
you
allow
baba.
on this platform to use any language,
Okay,
as long as it helps our viewers to understand. Chimakamba na
okay.
Chinyanja or Tonga,
I'll,
as long as our viewers are able to understand.
ichinyanja nshaishiba. I was thinking makamba chinyanja emkwai. So basically, yeah. So we even regard them as Ethiobaba. That's how they are. in the actual sense, that's a disorder. So with depending on the type of disorder on its or the kind of disorder, there are many attributes that are found on it. So I'll give an example with depression. Depression as a serious talk of the day, of which especially the youths currently are facing due to various reasons, which I know will elude later. They will resort now to even alcohol and substance abuse. That's one of the traits where you can be able to see that this person is not okay. There's something wrong with this person. They feel there's no solution which can be found to their problems. So they feel taking alcohol or abusing substance abuse is the only thing that can be able to help them. They are not knowing that they feel as if they are solving the problems, and they are just adding problems on top of the problems. So resorting to substance abuse is one of the signs you can also be able to note in a person who is suffering from mental or a disorder. Then when we talk about emotions, the time we talked about emotions, mostly the emotions are really send a very loud message. I know there are people, when you go to the mental health facility, there are people who are even chained. They are chained because they are violent. You cannot reach them. You cannot go there near them. They just have to be caged. Every time you just have either to use the injections they use, or just to let them be chained in there, because they are afraid that these people might even injure their fellow men, the patients in the facility. So it's the failure to control the emotions. There comes in also the issue of psychology, the psychological part of mental health, where the way they perceive the situation, that's the situation approach. They are unable to realize that this is a fellow human being. They're unable to realize. They just feel it's to hit, it's to do whatever they can. So the moment, even to answer most of these questions of the symptoms mainly, it all lies in those three areas of the emotions, the way a person is perceiving the situation, and how a person is socializing. Yeah. So when it comes to how a person is socializing, you also find many people, when they are going through a very tough challenge related to a mental disorder, in most cases, you find there's an isolation amongst themselves. They begin to, in the early stage, there's isolation. They begin to isolate themselves from society, from the people with them, from the people around them. They begin to just to cut ties from what their society has been. So you see, from here, time to time, that they are, because even these disorders, they are in stages. You just can't wake up just like that. But these illnesses are in stages. They occur in stages. There are early stages, the mid stages we can call, and the extremes. And when they reach the extremities, that most of these even end up being changed in the mental health facilities. So in the early stages, you find they just begin the simple self-isolation of an individual, begin to isolate him or herself from either the family. Because if a person is not in a family, he's in a state. If not in a state, then he's in a church. So, for example, the person is in a family and they begin to cut the ties with them, the family who are close to them. They begin to cut ties with the people who are, if they go to church, the people they relate with at church. If they are in a state, the people they relate with at work, they begin to cut their ties slowly by slowly. Those are the little stages. Those are some of the things we really need to pay attention to, even where we are living as colleagues. Then, even as we talk about that, one thing we should realize is a person going through certain a mental challenge sometimes, because it all starts from, most of these, they start from a problem. They are facing a problem and they feel a solution cannot be found, and they keep hunting themselves. Okay. I know we'll talk about the causes later. They keep hunting themselves and their self-esteem lowers down. So some of them are unable even to share the problems with the others. They are unable to share. They are scared. If I share this problem, for example, I share the problem, people will not take me seriously. Nobody will take me. If I say I'm having the depression, if it's real, the real depression, somebody will, they'll be like, they won't even understand me after all. What? So that's one of the fears. Most people are unable to share the problems because they have nobody to trust. They feel they don't trust anybody because nobody will take them seriously. Secondly, they are scared that they'll find a milestone, like a laughing stone. They'll be laughing at me. If my problem is so deep, they'll be like, they'll just begin to laugh at me and begin to give reference to the children and be like, this is what, no, don't be like him, don't whatsoever. So those are some of the reasons why some of these people are unable to share their problems. Then the other thing is we need to fight that, or to fight that, to avoid that, we need to create an environment where we are able to interact and relate, either at friendship level, the kind of friends we have. Let's take in interest in what, knowing our colleagues' problems. That's just one thing I should have noted out. Maybe we could have even forgotten about it. It's very important anyway. I think we can proceed from here.
All right, thanks. So
Yes.
you've broken it down very well for us. I think it's easy to follow.
Yeah. Mr. Reuben, are you there?
So I take questions from our viewers and read the comments. So let's talk about the causes. What causes these mental disorders or illness?
Okay. So the causes there, when we talk about mental illnesses, we have a lot of causes, a lot of reasons that are leading to these mental disorders. I would first things first. I would okay. Let me start with trauma. Or no, let me not start with trauma. Let me start with alcohol and drug abuse, because this is one of the other leading reasons of which we just have to talk about. So one of the causes is drug and alcohol. I mean alcohol and drug abuse. Alcohol and drug abuse. This is one of the leading reasons which is leading most people into having mental disorders. This has been proved through the statistics of the people entering the mental health facilities. Mostly alcohol, drug and substance abuse. These are the one thing which is really a leading factor to mental disorder. I wouldn't enter in details and discuss what really how alcohol affects and which part of the brain alcohol affects, but anyway, should be a story for another day, I'm sure. But alcohol and drug abuse, it's really one thing that is really causing mental disorders. The other thing is this history or the history of abuse, okay, and trauma. Okay, so I'll incorporate trauma and the history of abuse in a context. So what I mean by this is there are many people out there who have been in situations where they could not share, they never shared, or it happened so badly, they were so hurt inside them and they could not share to them. So these kind of situations can be either sexual abuse, okay, child abuse, witnessing violence. Those are very strong things that really have a great impact on a person's thinking and how a person perceives the situations or perceives problems. So having experienced sexual abuse, the child abuse in its own, especially not, let me not say especially, sexual abuse, child abuse, these are really critical and they really affect a person's mental health in a very negative way, and it's something that is really leading to that can lead to a serious mental disorders. Then the others I can talk about discrimination and criticism. So when I talk about discrimination, I would refer to our colleagues. For example, if I'm not mentally, let me not say mentally, let me say if I'm physically disabled. For example, my leg got amputated, which is not, I'm not an outcast to society, okay? I belong to a society. I need that feeling of belonging to a society. But the moment there is the discrimination in it, that discrimination begin to criticize. There are certain things that I can do, the others, and every privilege will be given to those who are healthy, who are always, that's the discrimination comes in, okay? And it's at that point where these people become so, they build up the trauma builds up inside them and it begins to burn, and it's from there that it has a great impact on the mental health of an individual. So some of these even things like genetic conditions or inheritance or history of mental illness in a family, okay? So there are some of these mental illnesses, some are passive genetically. They reach extremities such that they become since I talked about the stages of mental illnesses, like they occur in stages. They could be the early phase, the middle. I can say maybe the middle phase of some sort, and the extremities. When a mental disorder reaches extremities, there are those mental you cannot be able to, like you can try, but you cannot completely be able to cure the disorder. Okay, and some of these it becomes now they can even it can even lead to what we can call mutation, to those doing whatever the sciences in the med schools and in medicines, we can call the mutations. And when the gene mutations, that's in the DNA, and when it enters there, when it enters the DNA, it could be a passive what, it could, that mutation could be a passive what, um could become now passive to the offspring. It's at that context now where we come now as what we are talking about now, inheritance and the genetic conditions. That's how basically I could put them together. So that can also be the previous history of an individual suffering from extremes or extremities of a mental disorder can be passed on to the offspring. So yes, that's
So
another that's
it can be a genetic problem.
yes, when it reaches those extremities, it becomes now it can even affect the it can have it now affects the
The
genetic
offspring.
the offspring, and now the genes now becomes affected in that context. So those are some of the causes. Then we can also talk about biological and environmental factors, so like exposure to dangerous materials. That's why we always advocate for our brothers and sisters working in toxic, not really toxic environment, but the dangerous environments, to always be provided with PPEs, the personal protective equipment, uh, which should at least sustain and help them to be safe even at the workplaces. Because I'll give an example. Maybe, for example, in the lab, you have the maybe the UV light or something like that, the kind of radiations. Even, yeah, those are some of the things that, if not well handled, can also lead to illnesses, mental illnesses, in one way or the other. And some of these, even just in maybe somebody working in a mine, or maybe in mines where it's like, for example, in coal mines, it's not that much that safe unless you have enough PPEs to protect yourself. So serious exposure. Some of these are in the furnaces where they're burning these things mostly, and again they are always exposed to different kind of gases, which some are toxic and some have a very negative impact. So that's what we generally relate to when we say biological and environmental factors that are leading to mental illnesses.
All right. Thank you very much. Let me take a question from the comments, and it's coming from
Okay,
Lance. It says, "Can phobia
okay,
also be?" Yeah, I think you're about to say, "Can phobia also be regarded
okay. Be
mental
regarded
health?"
as a mental health problem or disorder. Okay, so phobia comes in not necessarily encompassing it as a mental disorder on its own. Maybe we could phrase it putting it in the anxiety form of disorder. So, and I'm sure with phobia, it comes it also in extremities or in extremes, just as anxiety becomes a mental disorder when it's in its extreme, in its extremes. Okay, so phobia, we can encompass it within the anxiety kind of disorder, but that's with the extremes, like when it reaches the extremes point of it.
All right. Thank you very much. Our viewers, you can type in your question in the comments, and we'll be able to get the question and answer it. Now, Mr. Emmanuel, I want us to talk about the importance
Yes,
for me to know my mental health. Why is it important for me to know my mental health?
your mental health. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Reuben. Yeah, so the importance of knowing your mental health. Okay, even before I answer that, there's what we call emotional intelligence. Okay, something I should state. So emotional intelligence is something, it just refers to the ability of an individual, okay, ability of an individual to know or to understand his or her feelings at that particular time, and the feelings of the next person next to the person. So if you're able to to recognize how you're feeling at a particular time, okay, that's some way of having a good sign of your mental health. Okay, I brought it in. It's something important we all have to know, because it's one way to keep our mental health well and positive. Okay, so the importance of knowing your mental health is uh, it enables you to understand what you are going through, or what you are, or what you are feeling at that particular time. Mainly, it helps you. You cannot know how you're feeling if you don't know the feeling. What I mean is, if you don't know that you can feel sad, or if you don't know that you are sad, like there's a feeling called sadness, okay? There's a feeling of being sad. There's a feeling of being happy. If you don't understand, trust me, you cannot know how you're feeling. And that is that particular, it's that thing, the ability to know how you're feeling, that helps you to control your what, your emotions at that particular time. You'll be able to know, I'm feeling excited, okay, I'm feeling angry, okay, I feel nervous. So it's at that particular time that you'll be able to control your emotions, and you'll be able to understand the problem and be like, okay, so I'm feeling nervous, what do I do? Because I know how I'm feeling. Because our colleagues who are facing some mental health disorders, mainly, or mental health, or mental illnesses, mostly, there's a point where there's a lack in understanding of how they are feeling at a particular time. That's why there's just an abrupt reaction, because you're unable to control your emotions. And the controlling of emotions and feelings comes in when you know how you're feeling at a particular time. That's one of the importance of knowing your mental health. It helps you understand what you're feeling at a particular time, and it helps you understand and control your emotions and how you feel at that time.
Great. Uh, so the other question that I had for you is,
Mm.
uh, what, one of my family members is sick of maybe he's having a mental illness challenges, or illness or disorder. What role can I
Mm.
play as a family member? What's the role of of a family to help people with mental health?
Okay. One of the greatest role is to uh, okay, one of the most important thing that as people who are close to, as we are close, so in that context, you need to provide an environment to make them feel belonging. In as much as you know, or you know, or you suspect an individual is having a mental health problem, you need to keep them as accommodated as they can. They need to feel the feeling of belonging, because it's from there that they slowly, even before you take the action of, excuse me, even before you take the action of taking them to a rehab or a mental health facility, or just a hospital, because some of them just need need serious counseling. Even before you take them to that extent, they already have the trust in you. They can trust you and tell you the problem that you're facing, or if there is a cause to that, because we already talked that most of these mental illnesses are as a result of people going through certain situations, most of them of which they feel they cannot even handle. So let's creating an environment which is accommodative to them, and that will make them feel at home, feel at peace, feel accommodated, is one of the greatest way to help our colleagues who are facing these mental health challenges. Then, as a role, one of the roles you have is to always ensure, if you see something is not okay, try to reach out to, so you can seek some guidance from the health specialists, especially on in mental health facilities, mostly, because some of these, they just need maybe some drugs, and they'll be okay before they even reach. You need to to subject them to the therapy, or to the therapist, as soon as possible, before the mental disorder reaches the extremes of it. In the early stages of it, let's always try to create that kind of approach where in those early stages, if we suspect there's something that is not okay at this point, let's as soon as possible be able to refer our colleagues to what? To the therapist or to the people, to the health facilities where they can be helped better.
All right, thank you very much, our viewers. This is Health Zone. Um, the link has been shared. If you have a question for us, you can just come through the studio via the link that has been shared in the comment, or you can type in your question. Then we'll be able to get your question. Then my other question that I had for you is how is this mental health diagnosed? What can I take the person who has a mental health to see, to check really if it's really mental health or disorder?
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Reuben, we have at health, there are certain there are facilities that we have. We can call them the rehabs or the rehabilitation centers. These rehabilitation centers are not only for the people who are in extremes or the people we say they are mentally challenged or mentally ill. It's for everybody. If you feel there's something that is not okay, even yourself, you feel okay, this has been troubling me emotionally. I've been having these emotional challenges. You can be able to reach there, and they can even be advised. So most of these mental, some of or not, some of these mental illnesses, the way they are cured, it's through therapy. Most of them is through therapy, helping the people understand their value. It's like trying to restore the value that is in them and making them understand that they are valuable again. It's through these
Okay, so
therapies. But
sorry, Mr. Emmanuel, to disturb you. So I want to
yeah,
find out.
yes.
So you mean I can
Mm-hmm.
just walk in? Let's say I can just go to Chinama and say
Mm-hmm.
I'm not feeling myself very well. I want to check if maybe I have any mental health challenges or thing. Can they attend to me?
Okay, so the way in that context you don't go like just like that, but how you would go is it's a free it's something that is advised to regarding your mental health. So you can get there and they'll advise you and say, see this counselor here. This is the counselor you have. You'll be able, depending on how you're feeling at that time, you're saying, okay, I think I'm having challenges with this and this and this. Do you think it could be a mental disorder? They could give you even more advice and say the way you're feeling this and this and this is just the anxiety in its early stage. It's a bipolar in its early stage. What you have to do is this and this and this. You can be able to do that. So that's what I could say about it. The other thing is the way these most of these are cured, just as I said earlier, is through therapy. When they reach their extremes, most of them is through therapy, and some of them are like antidepressants. They're given antidepressants or depressant drugs, depending on the health or on the mental disorder they are facing at that time. They'll be able to give them. Some of them is through drugs and therapy, but mostly through drugs and therapy and the drugs. Those are the things mainly which are used even to help cure the most of these mental illnesses.
All right, seems time is not on our side, but I wanted to get the preventive measures before we go. What are some of the activities that I can engage in for me to maybe to prevent mental illnesses?
Okay. Thank you for that. That's a very important. That's something that is very important. There are situations where you find yourself. The moment you feel as if you feel very low and you no longer feel yourself, you feel something is not okay. Developing certain habits could be very helpful. I would give an example of sports. Sports is a very good activity that can help somebody to keep their mental health positive, their mentality positive. It's all about the positivity. Sports is something that is very great, and I would advise anybody who feel every time. Personally, I watch soccer. I barely play soccer, but I usually love watch. I usually watch soccer, and in most cases, when my team is playing, I would always be there. And I think I should have said one. I should have skipped one of these in the some of the signs. Maybe just quickly I can maybe state it. The moment you see a person stops doing what they love to do the most, should be a hinder, should be a highlight to you as an individual, either as a family. In one of the questions you ask as family, how can you know, and everything else. The moment an individual or a family, a colleague, stops doing what they love to do the most, find out more why the person has stopped. Yes, it could be for a good cause, but it's been of course studied, researched about. Mostly one of the results which happen is these people, a person going through a mental challenge, usually they'll most of them will stay away from doing what they love to do the most. So one of the advice I could give is usually sports, and read some other cultures, reading cultures, depending on the environment, because we're in different environments. Some are where some are in villages, some in towns, some are in what. So some can talk about the kind of lifestyle somebody has. Some will just be like, okay, some activities, I feel low, I go to the pool, I swim because it's in summer. Some would be like, okay, in the village, whenever I feel low, I'll just go in the field. I begin the farming there, and as I come back, I would have already gotten up my positive vibes, and everything else comes in later. So depending on the environment which a person and individual may be in. But one of my recommendation would be sports. Either if you can't do sports, you can still watch sports and find it fun. Find something that interests you, that you'll be able to, every time you do it, or you have it in place, it gives you a positive mentality. To some it can be songs, music. To some you can just be feeling low, and the moment a certain music plays, for example, somebody, you're feeling very low, and somebody just abruptly and plays location by your maps, and you begin to dance. Although, so it's like just depending on what you can do, what you feel gives you a positive energy. And some of them, even movies, it's a great start of it. But always remember, we are always, what we watch, what we do mostly has an impact on our general being.
All right. We have a question in our chat, and it's coming
Okay.
from Chikonta. He's asking, are all mental disorders curable? All the forms that you've mentioned, the bipolar, paranoia,
All right.
uh, delusional traits, are they
Yes.
curable?
Okay. Okay. Um most of them are curable. Most of them are curable. Please quote me correctly. Most of these are curable. But we have sometimes a limitation to the extreme in which the illness has gone. If it reaches the most extremities, there are certain illnesses you cannot, when they reach the extremities, some of them cannot be cured. And that's an emphasis. That's why we're having this mental health awareness, because we don't need people to be reaching those extremities where the mental health illness cannot be cured. We need, if somebody is going through something, let it be cured when it's in its early stage where it can be cured. Because if it reaches the extremities, trust me, you find a challenge. Some of them, if it reaches the extremities, it cannot be cured. Most to some, that's how you find sometimes a person can be, they're always on medication. They take the medicine just to, when they feel, when it's just to keep them in that kind of context. But when the moment they stop taking the medicine, it becomes a different case. So they try to suppress the illness, like the illness, like trying to bring everything to normal. But the moment the drugs are out, it becomes now abrupt. So some of them are not, you cannot cure them when they reach their highest level of extremities. That's what I would say about the question.
All right. Can you have your concluding remarks, Mr. Emmanuel, and just summarize it for us what mental health is? And
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, in my conclusion to the viewers out there, um, mental mental illness is real, and anybody um, is a potential uh, patient, or is a potential culprit of mental illness. So failure to take care of our mental health is what is going to lead to going to us to face these challenges of mental illnesses. So let's take good care of our mental health. The moment we feel something is not okay, let's always try to find that which gives us the positive energy to do to do away with the negative energy. Let's try to create an environment where we should all be able to relate. Let's take in interest in understanding and knowing our friends' situations, the problems our friends are going through. Even if we cannot help them, let's try to always try to take keen interest in them, in their problems, and help them. It gives them a feeling of belonging that people really care. Even as I live here, as we leave the discussion, it starts with you and me. It starts with you and me, the viewers out there, and me. Let's be cautious about this mental health. As I said earlier, anybody is a potential culprit of, or is a potential victim of mental illness. And let's always be able to realize, but it starts with realizing how we are feeling at a particular time. Let's always know how we are feeling at a particular time. It will always help us to understand how, or it will always help us to know how to perceive the problems and challenges that we are facing, and it will reduce the chances of us having mental illnesses.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel. Hope to see you soon on Ubuntu channel, Health Zone.
Okay, maybe. Okay, I don't know if it's allowed, but maybe before I could leave, there could be any queries, as people could drop their questions in the Ubuntu channel. You can reach out on the page. Have a Facebook page of my name, Emmanuel Chabamba Activist. We can be able to interact from there in case you need the direct interaction of it. You can reach the page Emmanuel Chabamba Activist, the activist. Yeah, that's a page. Yeah, there's a picture of myself in a Manchester City jersey, of course. So we talked about sports being important, of course. So
Yeah, yeah.
myself in a Man City jersey, and that's where you can. I think that's the easiest way we can be able to reach out and have a discussion with the viewers in case there's anything that could be talked about outside the box.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chabamba. And I hope you have a photo of maybe Nkana or Zesco United uh, profile pic on your page. Otherwise, it was a great discussion on mental healthy. And of course, time is
Yeah, no,
not on our
I have
side.
a
We can
I
go
have a
on with this
picture.
discussion.
Yeah, I have a
Yeah.
picture of
Otherwise,
myself actually in Hero Stadium there the time the Zambia won the game. Okay.
all right. Thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel, like I already said. And thank you also to our viewers. This has been Health Zone on Ubuntu channel. Remember, always like the page, subscribe on YouTube channel, and follow us also on Twitter. This has been a special edition of Health Zone on Ubuntu channel. Good night and see you next week, same time.